All right. Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great February. Um, we're almost halfway through the month. Ain't that crazy? I also realized, like earlier today, that I had scheduled this on the Super Bowl, so I'm going to be shocked. I see a couple people showed up, so clearly, thank you. Consider this counter programming of a nature. Uh, Not one of my. I think I will retitle this particular one as Super Bowl episode or whatever. Hey Pretzel, how you doing? Hey Eric, how you doing? Thanks for being here, guys. And yeah, we'll see who shows up. If not, then we'll just record this for posterity and move on right from there. Terrible ideas. Thanks for being here. Nice to see you. Pretzel, hey, I got the budget figured out mostly for my big trip this summer or fall. Awesome. I'm telling you, I actually probably should do an episode or something related to budgeting for high points. A practical guide to having the funds to embark on this adventure. What are the things that are necessary for it? That might be a decent idea. Yeah, so once again, thanks everybody for being here. I am enjoying tonight Locust Lane's Game Day Whiteout, appropriately named because it is Super Bowl Sunday. It's a nice IPA. And I'll be the first to admit, I'm not really an IPA fan. I know some folks might consider that a bit of heresy, but I don't mind them. But in the big scheme of things, I can take it or leave it. So I prefer, actually, if you asked what my favorite particular style is, a portly guy like me likes stouts and porters. So I guess it fit the bill on that note. So let's see what we got in the chat. The New England High Points minus Maine. Is Vermont the only one with an entrance fee of sorts? I plan to do the toll road route. You're going to pay, if you do the toll road up in New Hampshire, you'll pay a fee. Or even if you take the train, you'll pay a fee. I don't think you pay a fee on the hike. I think that's, if you just find the trailhead, you'll be fine. But Vermont, yeah, definitely you'll pay. I can't remember what it is. I'll say it's like $15. Maybe. I do know of the two. Mount Washington is more expensive than Mount Mansfield. But that's not a bad drive. Yeah, it was not a bad drive at all at Mount Mansfield. I like IPA full body. I will confess that I do, if there is a particular style of IPA that I'm partial to, there's two. One is the black IPA, which, basically take a nice roasty porter and combine it with a standard style IPA, and, they had a child and you get a black IPA. I do like those. I also like the doubles, the big malt bomb doubles. Trogs here in Pennsylvania has Nugget Nectar. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, so for New Hampshire, if you're planning to drive to the top, you'll pay a fee as you go up the toll road. Also, that's not a bad drive either. I think there is a fee to drive to the top of Greylock, but I don't know. I didn't drive to the top of Greylock. I actually hiked that one. So let's see. This weekend, my friend and I are doing our winter summit attempt at Mount Washington. Wow. 3-day window, Friday through Sunday. Though it looks best Saturday. Good luck, Eric. That will be epic. I hope you guys get phenomenal weather for that. As always, be careful, but you guys know yourself best. But that could be pretty epic. So, also speaking of winter summits, for those that are in the Midwest, this coming weekend will be the winter dates for Charles Mound. I believe just Saturday and Sunday. I don't think they are open actually on the President's Day holiday, but Saturday and Sunday, if you get a chance and you're over in the Scales Mound area, northwestern Illinois, Charles Mound will be open for the winter ascent if you are so inclined. It's actually on my list. I want to get back there and do that at some point. So, yeah. What else has happened of late? Update on things. Series got sort of put on hold, but I have made significant progress on New Hampshire, and that's actually almost done. I'm happy to say that that one will be out the door and scheduled to go live on 1 March. So you'll get a Friday. Maybe I should put it out on Leap Day if I get it done. Why not? You don't get many February 29th. So it might be done even before that. So, but I've been making significant progress. That episode turned out, I think you're going to find it rather funny. I find it rather funny. So let's see. I like the thanks. South Carolina episode turned out much better than I expected it to. It was a hard, like I think I mentioned it before, super long day. Driving all the way from the Panhandle in Florida, all the way ended up in DC, and that was a stop on the way. But it's still an area. Like, it's funny. I look at that and I'm like, that was a good bit of work. It's definitely better than the original effort. Though that is not a slight on what Brian and I shot in late 2016. I think it was. Yeah, I think it was December 31st, 2016. I had intended to film South Carolina and then actually do Mount Mitchell. But the road up to Mount Mitchell, the Blue Ridge Parkway, was closed. So, but going back there, and I feel if I could have had a full day, I could have got more on Table Rock. I could have got stuff on Pinnacle Peak, more good footage than what I did. So, but overall, still happy. I stand by the work that was done the first couple of years ago. I stand by the work that I did over this summer. So I think it tells a much more comprehensive story. So I appreciate that, Eric. And is just me? Is the volume is going down? I'm not sure. I hope not. I think the way I see the little green dots that float and track the volume, it looks like it's staying pretty constant on my side. So let's see. Other things that are on the do list right now, I've actually started sketching out. I want to, the drone has been a thing I've added in over the course of the last year, a little bit more than a year now. And I've decided that it might be beneficial for other folks coming in to put together a list of sorts on state high points where you can actually fly the drone. Which ones, is it a go? Which one is it a no-go? And share that information. So started pulling that together, and that's been interesting. It is definitely once you really start digging into it, and part of the reason that all came up is I saw an article about a guy that got busted for flying his drone over the AFC Championship game a couple weeks ago. And they came down on him like a ton of bricks, and rightfully so. Like he flew it in Baltimore. I think it was the Ravens and the Chiefs, but So, I mean, talk about not checking up on your on your airspace. The person wasn't licensed. They didn't, they just thought they were flying a drone, and they thought it would be cool, and it turned out to be quite the. They're talking with all the charges, 4 years in prison. I mean, violation of national security airspace. Violation of several FAA regulations about flying over people, and et cetera, et cetera. So that just got me thinking in the big scheme of things, you know, when you're flying that drone, where can you fly it? Where is it appropriate? Um, so let's see what we got going on in the chat. I did Florida's on weekend trip to 3 highpoints, Mississippi, Louisiana. Yep. Sweet as cake. Yeah, some cornbread is like that down south. Hey, C-Toss, thanks for being here. Glad you're here. Do you have everything sorted out for Mount Hood? Historical background, something. I got a lot sorted out for Mount Hood, but I don't think Hood's happening this year. I think I'm going to have to bump it. Too much is going down at work right now, and I'm finding, well, let's put it this way. My summer plans I've locked those in, but I've had to punt already for stuff that I wanted to do in March, and I'm hoping my stuff for April doesn't get washed out either. The funny thing about the real job, sometimes it gets in the way. So, yeah, I think I'll have a good. It's funny. I've actually photographed and flew on Mount Hood. Flew on Mount Hood last October, but I'd photographed the mountain before, and I actually have a nice little collection of B-roll for that mountain. Because it is so photogenic. But yeah, I think I have a nice story around that one. It's well, I mean, you can't go wrong with that particular area. You get to, you can talk about Lewis and Clark. You can talk about, the fur trade. You can talk about, 54-40 or fight, that whole sort of mix of things. So the story there will be pretty cool, I think. It's definitely turning out. I think it's going to be a longer episode. So yeah, it's shaping up nice, but I just don't think it's going to happen this year, which is unfortunate. Speaking of things that should happen this year, if you haven't already, the lottery is open now for Mount Whitney. So if you have any intent of going up Mount Whitney, California, this year you've got from, well, now to the end of February to get your stuff submitted for the lottery. Hopefully get your permits to go. So I've got all my dates sort of sorted, and I'm going to submit things in to see how, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be luckier this year than we were last year. So backup plan for Whitney, if Whitney doesn't happen, is I talked about wanting to do Idaho. So Idaho would still happen in the middle of August, and Whitney hopefully at the tail end. But I put in for the dates I'm putting in for Whitney are basically one entire month, like from August, middle of August, all the way through to the middle of September. So we'll see what we get. Of course, the literal most popular time that everybody's throwing their stuff in. So would I be really curious if anybody has any experience with Whitney on getting, permits on when they did walk up or things like that. I would love to know your thoughts and any insight you have if you've already done that peak. So, Stephen Wagner, hey, nice of you to be here. Experienced solo climber was rescued on Mount Hood last week. After summoning, a whiteout moved in. Search and rescue were able to get him and help him hike out on his own. Man, that search and rescue team, both on Hood and Rainier, they are champs, man. Neither peak to be taken lightly, especially in the winter. So, thanks for sharing that, Stephen. All right, let's see what else we got going. Pretzel's got a pop quiz going. What's the average difference between the national parks, high point and low point? And let's see what else. Hey, your boy Alex. Thanks for being here. Nice to have you here. Terrible ideas. I got a permit from the lottery for the day ascent. Okay. How many? I'd be curious to know how many years you put in before you got lucky, or if you were, or if you got pulled that first year. So let's see. Traveling around, man. Hey, nice. Thanks for being here. I liked your Kentucky episode. For those that haven't seen it, go check out Traveling Around Man's channel. He just posted one for Black Mountain. What was it? Earlier this week? I think it was earlier this week. But go give it a watch. It's good. So I've done Whitney. Got lucky with the permit the first time. The second time I applied, didn't get the lottery, but was able to get the second one. Nice. Thanks for sharing that, man. I appreciate that. So, yeah. I don't know. One of the things that came up recently that I'm curious about finding out more information on is here in the home state of Pennsylvania, current home state, Wisconsin being, always close to my heart, as my original home state, is the Pennsylvania High Point potentially shifting. So, if you haven't heard, it would still be on Negro Mountain, but it wouldn't be Mount Davis. It would actually be somewhere along that ridgeline. So, more to follow as that situation develops. So, I doubt it would be very far from where Mount Davis is. I would be curious to know if they rename it, if it is the case, because Davis himself owned a substantial chunk of that mountain, I thought. So I would be curious to it would be there'd be no end of hilarity for me if they literally yeah, we're just gonna move Mount Davis, 500 meters over, but we're still gonna call it Mount Davis, just to confuse people. So Turboli's first try, I got it. I just put in 10 different days. However, I no longer think it is feasible for me to ascend 6,000 feet. Yeah, might do an overnight. I'm thinking, I've talked to Brett before. He's gone up it a couple times. He's helped me. He's been my partner. Him and Eric have been my two steady companions for most of the western peaks. Brett all the way. Eric, I think, for most of them, except for can't remember. Utah. Eric didn't go up Utah with us. Probably much to his enjoyment considering the stories. But Eric's gone up a lot of them. But I know Brett's gone up Whitney a couple times. So I still think it's going to be, for me, when I do it, it's going to be one crazy big day. So step off at 0 dark 30 and go for broke. Yeah. Speaking of Utah. Yes, we can speak of Utah. I've organized a lot of files. I just got to get them over. So, Your boy Alex, fun fact, the highest mountains of South America are higher than the highest mountains of North America. That is true. The funny thing, though, is if you sort of track that um, Cordillera, that is one sort of geologically one massive range, technically running all the way from down around like right before Tierra del Fuego, all the way up, all the way through the Andes, the mountain chains through Central America, Mexico, up through the Sierra Nevadas, all the way through Canada, all the way into the Alaskan Rockies, all because of the Ring of Fire. That plate, that Pacific plate, that's currently, I think it's subducting. So it's pretty wild. That mountain building on that tectonic global scale. So, but yeah, if you want the big ones, you got to go south. So, let's see. There's 3 personages that I've done either the High Point or Low, Shenandoah, Iowa Rail, Teddy Roosevelt. I have to check. I think I've actually unintentionally done the highest point on Iowa Rail years ago when I worked for at Camp Manitwish YMCA up in Boulder Junction. They had a backpacking trip that I led twice on Iowa Rail, and I think you go right over the top. I'd have to double check, but yeah. So I may have knocked that one out. The funny thing I've always wanted to do with Isle Royale is Isle Royale is a substantial island. If you're looking at Lake Superior, it's the island over on the left side of the lake, close to Minnesota, but it's actually part of Michigan. Reasons. But in Isle Royale, I think, what's the name of the body of water? Is it Siskiwit Lake? Needless to say, Isle Royale, big island in a freshwater lake that has a lake in it that has an island in it. And I've wanted to high point that island. Like, if I would go back to Isle Royale, that is the one weird thing I'd really like to do, is get to the highest point of the island in the biggest lake in Isle Royale in Lake Superior. So, an island on an island. Yeah, then I have been to the top of Mount Desor, because the Greenstone Ridge goes right over it. Maybe it could be Ryan Island. I can point it out if I looked at a map. Okay, Terrible Eyes, don't make the mistake I did staying in Lone Pine, which is only 3,000 feet high. Yeah, I feel for Whitney, all I can recommend is definitely stay somewhere high the nights before. Like Mammoth Lakes is close to 10K. You can hike up nearby Mount Dana for further acclimatization. Every time I've gone west and done the crazy thing I've done, we've always tried to stay at a decent elevation the night before, and then make that run for it. Yeah, I think it is. I'll have, what, Pretzel? I know you're really good about this. You'll remind me on the next one, and I'll hopefully have an answer. But ever since I was on that island, God, that's 25 years ago. That has been one of the things I've wanted to go to that island. But now I want to go to that island to get to the highest point at it. So, yeah, I think, Eric, you're right. It could be a pretty unique little high point. So, no, when we did that backpacking trip, we started at Rock Harbor, and then cut across, went down the Menong Ridge Trail, and then did, is it Feldman's Loop? Down towards Siskiwit Bay. Then you cut up, get on up to the Greenstone Ridge, and then we hike back. So it's about 11 good days of backpacking, 11, 12 days of backpacking. It was a lot of fun. Took the Vomit Comet out of Copper Harbor, and and then caught the big boat back to Houghton on the Keweenaw. Well, both of them are on the Keweenaw. But yeah, some of my favorite backpacking memories were on Isle Royale. It's a beautiful island. I would recommend anybody go there. Just in general, it's a great national park. So definitely worth checking out. The other, yeah, so I also not came up with the idea. I've decided that, as we're doing these live streams, things like that, I realize there's that off week, and I want to start filling that off week. So I think I'm going to introduce a new series of shorts and start dropping that in between, and then the long episodes coming out hopefully once a month as we keep going. Fun fact, Timms Hill is one of, if not the most disputed state high point ever. Yes. But I'll push back on that one because it's funny you say that. Because Pearson's Hill is actually really close. And no joke, we're not talking much. We're talking like 8 inches. But I will say this. When you talk about disputed, one of the great high pointing disputes of all time is the Colorado one, where they literally were trying to stack rocks on the top of Mount Massive to make it taller than Mount Elbert. But Timms Hill is fascinating because, one, how it was identified originally as a state high point by Leonard Reisberg. He was the Price County Commissioner. And so, nerd alert. I grew up in the county south of that, Taylor County. My parents' farm is like 30 miles away from Timms Hill. I ran cross country on Timms Hill. I go there every time I go back to see my folks. I try to make it to Timms Hill. I went there as a kid. But no joke, it is pretty funny that, Alex, after one of the times I was at Timms Hill, I literally went to grab breakfast at the Hill of Beans, which is right across Bass Lake. And no joke, there was two local folks in there going up and down about which one was taller, Pearson Hill or Timms Hill. And it was absolutely hilarious. Pearson Hill's not that far away. The problem is with that particular area is, one, they probably do need to resurvey the whole thing. But there is it doesn't, if you can't tell. Like it's crazy. Like even when you're standing on that tower looking out, you can see the other bits of elevation. But nothing stands out. Like it's just, here's a bump, here's a bump, here's a bump. It's all glacier till. Like it's all remnant of glacier debris as the glaciers receded. Whereas, if you saw Rib Mountain further south, or even like Blue Mountains, like you can't help, like that's a thing. Like you can see it. There's prominence, there's vertical relief. And you don't get that with Timms Hill. You just feel like you're in the woods. And so the great dispute between Timms Hill and Pearson Ridge continues. So we'll see. Maybe someday it'll get resolved. So let's see. I went the year before the pandemic, didn't I think? For the truth, the thought of getting the high point of an island reminds me of the one on the Wizard Island. That's in Meteor Crater. I think it's Meteor Crater, right? Crater National Park. Not Meteor Crater, but Crater National Park in Oregon, South Oregon. It's absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful lake. Crater Lake National Park, yeah. Can you even go to Wizard Island, though? I thought it was closed off. I don't even know if you can actually get on there. I do know, like, when I saw that picture the first time ever as a kid, that island absolutely enraptured me. Like, I still think it's incredibly striking. There it is. This huge caldera. And, there's this little island out in the middle of it. It's absolutely gorgeous. So, needless to say, there's still a lot. I'm hoping when I do New York this coming year, one of my goals is to actually pick up the high point of Long Island. What's the name of it? Is it Mount J? If Archie was on, he'd tell me. Oh, there you go. Steven, thank you. You can take Park Service boat to Wizard Island. You wouldn't, and I think you would know, Steven, that is your area out there. So I appreciate it. Mount Mazama. Yep. Another one of the great volcanoes of the Cascade Range, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. Wouldn't be the first time. And it most assuredly won't be the last time. So, yeah, there's a lot that I still, sometimes when folks ask, like, if you were to continue this series beyond state high points, these would be some of the little more esoteric things I'd start considering picking up, just to potentially expose people to some of the cool, fascinating places that's out there. Erica, I finally brought a GoPro to record my high pointing. What cameras do you use to record your high points? So my prime is an old Nikon D7200. If you see a static shot, that's shot with that. Now, Brett, when he films, uses a Canon. I can't remember the model. It's a slightly nicer rig than mine. And then Puerto Rico was shot with a Sony A7. Also, can't tell you the exact model, but very nice rig. Still had a very nice rig. But I use that old school Nikon D7200. It's a little bit heavier, but man, if that thing is not bulletproof, rainproof, whatever, I've shot that in every climate condition, in the heat, in the cold, in the rain, in the snow. It has never let me down. Love that camera. I dread the day I have to figure out how to get something as robust as that. So that's what I use for my prime. And then I use a Rode wireless mic set to capture sound off that. Now, I use this GoPro 11. Has been a recent, I think I got it last year, 2 years ago. I started using it more, but I use it, I think it was last year. But that's one of the cameras I've been using for some walk and talks. I've also used my iPhone for walk and talks. Sometimes it's just easier to get that out. And then if you see car footage, I use an old GoPro 4 when I mount it on the car. And if you see the driving stuff, for one, if the GoPro 4 falls off and gets destroyed, that thing's put in a lot of years. It still gives me good, decent footage, but if I lost it, it's not the end of the world. So I feel pretty confident about mounting that on the hood. So I've got that. I got a gimbal on the GoPro 11. You probably don't need it. That both the 11, I'm sure the 12 definitely has really good stabilization. But I just like the fact that when you power this gimbal up, it just it's easier to hold it like this, and it's not powered up right now. So, but it's easier to hold it like this and talk to it for me for recording purposes. And then the camera on the drone, it's a DJI Mini 2. Um, so that's the camera that's shooting that drone footage. But with that one's slightly separate. But that Nikon D7200, GoPro 11, the GoPro 4, and my trusty iPhone. Those are the cameras I use to capture footage. Um, and I think I will stay with that setup all the way through for the rest of Rooftops. Um, though I might that tune could change because I am looking for a new rig for the Finding the Founders series. So I'll probably get a better prime camera, like a significant upgrade. I've been shooting that 7200 20. I think I got that in December of 2015. So I think it's 9 years old. It is doesn't let me down. Thing's great. Let me know how your GoPro 12 does. I think you're going to love it. I mean, I hope you love it. But I would be curious to know what your take is when you really get to using it, Eric. Um, love to get your feedback. So, your boy Alex, fun fact, many believe High Point, New Jersey to be the New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania tri-point. In reality, it's close. It's off by a little bit, and that is true. Got to head over to Port Jervis area, and you go. I can't remember the name of the cemetery, but the tri-point is at the tail end of a cemetery, and you go underneath the interstate. And I will argue that the New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania tri-point right down there on the Delaware River, right underneath the interstate racing over, is the loudest tri-point in the country, just from the traffic alone. Yep, pretzel too. Gotta go back here. Like say, you can go to Woods Boat Trail. There you go. Awesome. So, yeah, I've been to the cemetery you're talking about. Yep, found the traffic marker. Yep, right down there you go. Like it literally is. You pull up to the thing. You're like, where is it? And then you look down, and you have to take that little trail, and it's right down. Not quite right down on the shore, but awfully close. Have you heard of the Black Mountain, Kentucky murder legend? You have piqued my curiosity. I have not. Wait a second. I think. Wait a second. I know. I think that might have been the one I was talking about at Halloween. Um, Headless Alice? Like, it's a messed up story. Um, so maybe I'd be curious to know what yours is, because the one I talked about for that area in at Halloween, that was crazy. Like, that was a messed up story. Um, it's fascinating. I mean, they don't call Harlan County Bloody Harlan because they all donated a lot of blood, or it had a vampire problem. It is um, there is some crazy history in Harlan County, Kentucky. Um, yeah, I think that murder story, Alex. If the one you're referencing is the one with the headless girl, that is a crazy story. for Kentucky for Black Mountain, but I'd be really curious to know if you got another one. But no, one of the reasons I want to go back and redo Kentucky is I felt I I think I could have told a better story. Once again, it was right in the beginning, right when we were starting to dig more into the history of places, and I didn't get as deep as I think I should have. Uh, yeah, that's the one. Yep, Alex. Yes, I do know that story. Yep, and her family were murdered. Yeah, that's the one. Crazy story. Um, so no, but that's on my redo list this potential year is Alabama, West Virginia, and Kentucky. Um, Alabama because hey, I got a shot to redo it. Come um, and Missouri too, if I can. I. It's funny. Missouri was the third thing I ever filmed um, for this series, and that totally needs a little bit more attention. So, but yeah, Kentucky, Black Mountain, Kentucky. I feel that area has so much potential. I say that every time we talk about Black Mountain. Area's got so much potential. And yet, it lies there, nothing happening yet. So the so hopefully we'll see. Maybe we'll get back there and redo it, talk about the Battle of Ewers, talk about Bloody Harlan in a little bit more detail. The terrible legend of that poor girl, and you go more into detail. Hopefully, drum up some support so people can value that high point a little bit more and maybe want to do something to really make it sing. So, um, yeah, now we've covered a lot of ground, folks. Anyway, I hope you guys. I think I'm gonna get ready to wrap this up. Man, that story in the book would literally be one of those like sidebar things, like the pullouts or whatever. Um, there's a name for them. I can't think of what the name is off the top of my head. Not an insert, but literally where it's like, oh, by the way, here's this fun, just this horrific story that'll keep your kids up late at night. Um, so, but yes, I was just in. Hey, David, nice for you to be here. Thanks for stopping in. I was just in Kentucky last summer with Daniel Boone National Forest. Yep. Um, there is the place I do desperately want to get the next time I can is I still want to get to like spend more time exploring Cumberland Gap. Um, but I think if I redo Kentucky, it's funny. I saw a question the other day of what was the first state created from another state, and depending on how you cut it, you can either argue Vermont or Kentucky. Um, Vermont has to pay off New York because of the land grants issued by one of my all-time favorite colonial Americans, good old Benning Wentworth. Um, before Vermont can become a state, they have to pay off New York. And Kentucky actually gets approved for statehood 2 weeks before Vermont, but Vermont becomes a state sooner than Kentucky. So depending on how you cut it, there's the answer to that trivia question. Vermont or Kentucky? Did you answer my question about tri-points? What is the most popular tri-point? That's a good question. I don't know. Since tri-pointing is such a niche thing, that I'd really be curious to know how. I suppose we could make some guesses. Um, we could make some guesses. I would say, the few that I visited, just based on what's available and how they're sort of set up, I would say that one, the Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania one, might be one of the more popular ones simply for the fact that it does have a signboard, it does have a parking area, and you can get to it readily, easily. Um, yeah, you know what? And terrible ideas, I think you may have actually just hit the nail right on the head. Yeah, Four Corners has to be. It is the only one. So technically, I would almost, I think you're right on. Yeah, I didn't even think of that right away, but that answer is so obvious. I feel that I think you hit it right on the head. I only know one little fact about that is where they tell you the quad point is not where the quad point actually is. I think it's like a little bit further away or something. So anyway, on that bombshell, let us wrap it up. Thanks everybody for being here. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. I hope you have a wonderful, let's see, rest of the night for the Super Bowl. I mean, take a quick look and see what it is. And it looks like it's 10-6, so that's a stellar game right there. All right. See you guys later. Eric, be careful out there, and best of luck on your summit attempt. All right. Later, everybody. Cheers.